Hi guys, so today's lecture will be quite a bit different. I found out that the audio was horrible. If you've seen the other lectures, you may have noticed that a lot of the audio tends to be bad sometimes. This is usually because I just have issues with OBS sometimes, or it picks up the wrong microphone, or I just don't have access to my good microphone and I have to use the one that comes with my laptop, which is understandably really bad. Today is one of those days where I don't actually know what went wrong, but something went terribly wrong with the audio. This means that I am recording these clips selectively for a second time, and I will be recording it separately and I will be narrating as we go. The video will also be more edited because I cannot be bothered to narrate the whole thing, and I frankly believe that it would be easier to just edit it a tiny bit and narrate the parts that are actually important. So I guess by accident you now have the most well-made video, at least in the lecture series, though I'm not proud of it because I don't want to do this, but also I am not re-recording an hour of footage, and I am not re-speaking an hour of footage when the conversations are unrelated. Anyway, enjoy it, and I hope that this lecture will be at least pleasant to you, since it probably took a lot more than the other lectures that I did. Okay, bye-bye. I will note that the first thing you see in here is a little warm-up that I did. It is a warm-up for me as the lecturer, because I'm obviously not perfect either and I do need to warm up. It's a very silly gesture drawing, you know, it's cool. So in this lecture that I'm now re-recording, we will be going over the basic principles of breaking down stuff into shapes. I had tea at the time, I don't have it now, or I do but very little. Anyways, we will be breaking stuff down into the basic forms, including legs, arms, and everything else into structure, as we call it. We will also be doing very rudimentary shading, or rather showing how where the shade would go without actually shading all that much. And we will be trying to make these individual things all fit together on a single figure drawing, going from gesture to structure to the shading itself. So what you're seeing right now is the figure that we're going to be drawing today. You may have noticed two, we will only be drawing one of them. At the end we didn't have enough time to draw both. Anyways, enjoy the first one. I'm going to be narrating as we go on. Right, so we first start off with the torso, as you may have noticed. I think the torso here is pretty prevalent and it overall conveys the motion quite well. So we're trying to convey the dynamic form of the torso and sort of see how that is in relation to everything else. You may see I'm trying to do this with the Michael Matesi method, and that's because I am. I think the method is overall a bit better at conveying very dynamic poses, such as this. I'm also not only doing the torso, but also the start of the arm, as I see a very prevalent movement in the arm itself. So it's sort of a linkage between the arm and the torso. So what I'm showing here at the ever so slightly schizophrenic overdrawing of the original image is the sort of motion of the body. You may notice a very prevalent C-curve, where one side of the body gets pushed into one side while the other is pushing against it. This is a balancing act between the two different sides. As you can see, she's sort of making a pose as you would if you were trying to draw a bow, for instance, where you put a lot of force into one part of your body, but that also means you must counterbalance it with the other. In here I'm specifically showing you that one of the counterbalances is the pelvis and the other one is the arms. So the arms are going forward while the pelvis is being pushed back and the legs are balancing that. I'm going to be speeding up the next couple of minutes. We start with the belly button and then we go into the head. I'm going to make a slight adjustment to how the hair works in here as a geometrical object because I notice a very prevalent shape. We're going to refine the head slightly from the initial sketch we did, and then we're going to move into the arms. The arms here are just simple rhythms you should be able to follow. Here we try to make the legs and they start looking not quite dynamic enough. However, we adjust and we fix it by slightly shortening them and then adding some wrapping lines, which ultimately will be what saves us. This is, of course, just to sort of show you how important wrapping lines can be and how good it is to keep doing them despite, me forgetting to do them right here. Regardless, I think you should keep doing your wrapping lines because you don't want to run into a mistake where it looks like it doesn't look good, it looks unrealistic, but then it kind of turns out it's not that bad, but it's you just forgetting the wrapping lines or maybe having some slightly inaccurate curves. You know how it is. So with this section, we finally move on to the most important thing, we might say, or the thing that we are trying to learn right now. Up to this point, it was just gesture, but now we are actually getting into structure. So we are going to start with a different color from preliminary shapes like the torso, the pelvis, and then we're going to build up into more complex shapes and smaller shapes like the arms and the legs. Then we're going to be breaking down the legs, and I think that's where we end it. The torso and the pelvis will be breaking down into rectangular shapes. You may break them down into circular shapes like the egg for the pelvis and the egg for the torso as well, though different types of eggs and different sizes. But you should always also add the square or rectangular torso/pelvis. This is mostly because it really helps you with shading, perspective, and especially rhythm. They don't have to be very rigid. You can make the square somewhat circular, but do keep in mind that the square is generally better to do. You can sometimes make the egg first, or the spherical shape of the pelvis or torso, in this case torso, and then define the borders and make it into a square. There are generally two ways you can draw legs, either making them as two big cylinders or doing the second approach, which is going to be shown here in a bit. The second approach is actually the way the muscles are separated in the leg, however it is a bit harder. We are going to be overlaying the first one and the second one, so the first one on the bottom and the second one is going to come later on top of it. You can immediately do the second one or you can just stick with the first one, it doesn't really matter. In most cases you will not need the second one, however if you ever want to render muscles, the second one will come in very handy because it is a shorthand on simplifying the three main muscles that are in the legs, so the flexor groups, and then the second sort of parts of the muscle. They all connect to the knee and are very useful to memorize. The little pink drawings I'm doing here are different ways of simplifying the knee. I think any of them is fine, however they all build on top of each other and you should generally know all of them. So the drawing I'm showing here is the different ways to simplify triceps, or the leg muscles. On the back, you can generally imagine them with this shape and you will not do much wrong. This is the kind of same muscles but from the front. Of course they're not really the same muscles, but they're the same part of the leg. And you can see how George Bridgman simplifies them and how there's sort of an intrinsic rhythm between them. That's it, not very complicated, just remember which side is which and how to draw them generally. There's a little bit of a dip in the, I believe, right side from your point of view, or left side if you're the person who's standing. Do remember that. It is also a group of muscles, so don't draw them that uniform. There are sometimes dips between them depending on how the skin interacts with them. Now we draw the breasts, and right after the breasts we draw the rest of the clothing. There's also a shading section, but I decided to cut it out because frankly it doesn't look that good and it kind of obscures the rest of the drawing. So this will have to be it, and I thank you for watching this sped up, edited video. If it worked well enough, I assume you enjoyed this. Feel free to pause it at any point to look at it in more detail. I'm not the perfect drafter, I know. My drawings are just okay, but I hope even these can be useful to you. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you really like this format, I might do another one or a couple of other ones. It doesn't take that much more time. However, I might even experiment with other formats, honestly. I think any of it is fine with me. But that does sort of assume that someone watches these lectures, which at the moment no one does. Anyways, I think we will be moving on to another stage as we've, I think, sucked this one dry. And we'll just be trying to do some other fancy stuff like rendering, like making a fully featured drawing, like shading, yay. And I hope you'll enjoy that once we get to it. Okay, it is really now the time to say goodbye. Even in the whole video and recording. I hope you had a good time. I sure have a good time recording these. I feel very productive after it. Bye bye.